name is Bill Kimmer. I'm the managing member of Metro Mortgage Consulting. We are a third-party loss mitigation company, and we are doing a series of small film clips. This is section 3 of 9, in which we are discussing short sale options. Nina is a client of mine, and we talked to her in section 1 about what her various options were. She's decided that she would like to discuss in more detail the short sale option.
Yep.
So Nina, do you have some questions?
Lots of questions. Timeline of a short sale.
The timeline of the short sale varies from bank to bank. In typical, I like to say that it's going to run 90 to 120 days. Typically what I try to do is get paperwork into the bank earlier to make that time period as short as possible, cutting it down. We've been successful in getting short sale approvals in as short as 1 day when we had all the paperwork ahead of time, everything done. That's very unusual. We've also had situations where they've run, unfortunately, as much as 6 months. So it depends on the bank, and it depends on the negotiator at the bank. And of course, it depends on how quickly we get information to them and back to them and get them what they want. But I would say 90 to 120 days would be a pretty good average.
Fair. Okay. And that includes, when you say that, okay, that includes finding the buyer and closing escrow.
What I like to do is, as you're looking, or the real estate agent is looking for the buyer, I'm working with the bank, sending them all the information they need, so that overlaps, yes.
And then when you said turning in the paperwork, what do you need from my end?
When I'm hired as the short sale negotiator, I work with you in pulling all the information together the banks are going to require. This typically involves getting bank statements, pay stubs, tax returns. We need to come up with, you're going to have to develop a hardship letter as to why you qualify for a short sale. We have a list of what all the banks need, and depending on the bank, we fit the our request to you as to the information the bank's going to require.
Okay. So not, like in my particular case, I know that I'm going to be laid off in a month. So is it hurting me that I'm still employed and my layoff is 30 days away?
No, you have a hardship. Basically what goes on with a bank is what they're looking for is they're trying to decide is if you're going to be in default or in imminent default. So as we're presenting a case to the bank, we're presenting to support either one of those situations. Of course, if you're not making payments, you're in default. If you have a layoff that's coming up, or you've had a reduction in hours, all these sort of things that occur in everybody's life, you may be in imminent default.
Okay. Well, you just brought up something pretty important. I mean, at the moment, I'm still making my payments because I'm still employed. Should I keep making my payments? I've heard people say that if I stop making them, that it will facilitate the process and catch the bank's attention.
I am asked that question on every transaction that we work with, and nobody went into these transactions and you didn't fill out an application and borrow money with the intent of defaulting on it. I know you didn't do that. So whether or not a person continues to make these payments is a very personal decision. Often when I'm working with people, they really don't have an option. The question comes, do they put food on their table or do they continue to making their mortgage payment? With other people, they're in a situation where it just is to no benefit to them whatsoever to continue making payments, and it puts them in a very difficult financial hardship. You have to make your decision yourself. I think the question comes up, so all I can do is try to advise you on the pros and cons to this. The question that you hear often, and maybe you're alluding to, is that a bank will not move forward with a short sale if you're making payments.
Right.
That's not true. I've had numerous transactions where we've had the client make payments all the way through to include the day they closed on the transaction. When we talk about credit implications, what we're going to get into in detail, but the biggest thing that's going to hurt you on your credit score is going to be missed payments. So I've had clients with the same bank who have made every payment. In one case, they were a bank teller, and if they had any ding on their credit, they were going to lose their job. They made all their payments all the way through the short sale process, and we completed the short sale, and we negotiated a settlement on the second loan. I've had other transactions where they just quit making payments, and there's no question whether or not you're in default, because you are. And then I've also had the third situation with the very same bank where they needed to see 2 consecutive missed payments before they would move forward with a short sale. In that case, the client missed 2 payments. They made the 3rd payment, the transaction moved forward, and we closed. A lot of times, people are under the impression that the bank is the one making the rules. Typically, they're not. It's the investor. In the case of Bank of America, they represent over 500 separate investors. So knowing exactly what the bank is going to do or the investor is going to require in every circumstance is pretty difficult. You actually have a situation where you have a group of investors who have their own protocol. They drop down to the bank who has its own protocol, and then you work with negotiators who have their own personalities. So trying to figure out that combination of exactly who's going to require what is pretty difficult. As far as whether or not we can move forward with a transaction, it's really going to be dependent upon the investor, and we're not going to know till we get there.
Okay. Well, for me, this whole process has been such a learning curve, and I tried to be really, really proactive. I mean, I mentioned to you earlier that I tried to go through the loan modification process. They said I qualified. At the end of the day, I didn't. I actually called my lender to tell them that my layoff was imminent and it was forthcoming. I wanted to be really proactive. I called on my second, and they flat out, word for word, said to me, "We won't talk to you until you're 90 days delinquent." And I've never missed a payment.
Yes.
And it was literally, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
And they're forcing me to be delinquent. And it's just the whole process is so frustrating, which is such a relief now to have someone handling the whole thing.
Well, if you have questions through the process, anywhere through the process, you know you can always call me, and we're going to go through it. I have a very high success rate at this. I know the bank's involved. I feel very confident we're going to get this through, and that we're going to get a deficiency release on the 1st and through the 2nd. I, of course, can never promise that, but we're going to do all we can to get you through this process and get it taken care of.
Well, I mean, what I'm thinking right now, just a question popped into my head. Why would they be more willing to talk to you than me?
They're not. They're
Because
absolutely.
they flat out, 90 days, we don't want to talk to you.
They're willing to talk to you. They will talk to you. What they're telling you they're going to do is they're not going to process your short sale. And so this is an investor-driven guideline.
Okay.
That one is requiring 90 days delinquent before they work it. Again, every investor is going to be different. I really can't tell you exactly where we're going to end up. If your credit score, if you have the ability and your credit score is important, you should continue to make these payments. If the investor is forcing you not to make the payments in order to move forward, then you're going to have to work with the hand that's dealt to you.
Okay.